I'm on a video conference call with dozens of people watching. Company executives, Pentagon brass, stakeholders. The VP's daughter, who stole my project 3 weeks ago, is announcing unauthorized changes that violate federal regulations. I can see the client's contracting officer's face darkening. My hand reaches for the resignation letter I wrote last night. I hold it up to the camera so everyone can see it clearly. I look directly at Colonel Hayes through my screen, and I whisper into my microphone, loud enough for everyone to hear, "She's lying about the certifications." Let me back up and explain how I got to that moment, holding my career suicide note on a federal contract call. 3 weeks earlier, I was living what I thought was a stable, predictable life. My name is Katie Sullivan. I'm 30 years old, and I've spent the last 5 years managing the Phantom Systems defense contract for Stratford Defense Solutions. $34 million. That's the value of the contract I built from the ground up, working my way from junior analyst to program manager. The contract involves providing cybersecurity infrastructure for 3 Air Force bases. It's not glamorous work. Most days are status reports, compliance checks, stakeholder meetings, and endless documentation. But I'm good at it. Perfect performance reviews for 5 straight years. The client trusts me. I know every regulation, every federal acquisition regulation clause, every stakeholder's name and preference. I can recite contract line item numbers in my sleep. My Monday mornings follow a rhythm. Coffee at 7, review weekend emails by 7:30, team stand-up at 8. That particular Monday, the rhythm broke. Gerald Vance, our VP of Operations, called an emergency all-hands meeting at 8:15. We crammed into the main conference room. 23 people, confused faces, whispered speculation. Gerald stood at the head of the table with someone I'd never seen before. A woman in her mid-20s, designer suit, confident smile. "Team, I have exciting news," Gerald began. His voice had that forced enthusiasm that immediately made my stomach tight. "We're bringing fresh perspective to our contracts division. This is my daughter, Amber Vance. She just completed her MBA at Wharton, and she's consulted for Fortune 500 companies on strategic modernization." My colleague David caught my eye across the table. His expression mirrored my concern. "Amber will be joining us as Senior Strategic Director," Gerald continued. "She'll be co-managing our flagship contract with Katie." "My contract?" He said it so casually, like he was discussing office supplies. Amber stepped forward. "I'm so excited to bring innovative thinking to defense contracting. From what I've seen, there's enormous opportunity to modernize processes and increase efficiency." The meeting continued for another 20 minutes. Buzzwords flowed freely. Disruption, agility, paradigm shifts. I took notes mechanically, my mind racing. Co-managing meant shared authority, shared decision-making, with someone who had 0 defense contracting experience. After the meeting, I tried to slip out quickly. I needed to process this. But Amber caught me in the hallway. "Katie, right?" She extended her hand. Her grip was firm, almost aggressive. "I've been reviewing your contract files. 5 years managing one contract? That's quite a long time in one position." The condescension was subtle, but unmistakable. "It's a complex contract," I said carefully. "Defense work requires deep expertise in federal regulations." "Oh, I'm sure it does." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. But sometimes deep expertise becomes entrenched thinking. I've consulted for companies 10 times this size. What works in the private sector can revolutionize government contracting. I felt my professional smile tightening. Government contracting has specific legal requirements. The federal acquisition regulation isn't just best practice, It's law. That's exactly the kind of bureaucratic thinking I'm here to challenge, Amber said. I've already started reviewing your processes, and I've found massive inefficiencies. We're going to shake things up. She walked away before I could respond, her heels clicking confidently down the hallway. I returned to my desk feeling like the ground had shifted beneath me. I opened my email to clear my head with routine work. That's when I saw it. Subject line, Organizational Update. Effective immediately. From Human Resources. I opened it with shaking hands. Dear Katie, following recent organizational restructuring, your title has been updated from Program Manager to Program Coordinator. Your signature authority has been adjusted accordingly. All client communications now require approval from Senior Strategic Director Amber Vance before distribution. Please update your email signature and business cards to reflect your new title. I read it 3 times. Program Coordinator. That was 2 levels below Program Manager. My signature authority, which allowed me to approve contract modifications up to $500,000, was gone. Every email I sent to the client now needed Amber's approval. This wasn't co-management. This was a hostile takeover. I looked around the office. Other colleagues were staring at their screens with similar shocked expressions. David walked over to my desk. "Did you get the email?" he asked quietly. I nodded. "This is bad, Katie. Gerald's putting his daughter in charge, and she doesn't know anything about FAR compliance." "I know," I said. "But what can I do? She's the VP's daughter." "Keep your head down," David advised. "Document everything, and maybe update your resume." I spent the rest of that day feeling like I was watching my career circle the drain, but I told myself it would be okay. I'd work with Amber. I'd teach her the regulations. We'd figure it out. I had no idea how much worse it was about to get. The first week under Amber's control, I tried to stay positive. I really did. I scheduled a meeting with her to walk through the contract structure, key milestones, and compliance requirements. She canceled it twice, both times via her assistant. On day 1 of week 2, Amber scheduled what she called a strategy session with the engineering team. She didn't invite me. I found out about it when Sarah from engineering mentioned it casually at lunch. "The new strategic director has some interesting ideas about accelerating our timelines," Sarah said, picking at her salad. My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. "What timelines?" "The Phase 2 deliverables. Amber said we're promising the client we can deliver 3 months early." I felt ice in my stomach. "Sarah, we can't do that. The contract has approved schedules. Any acceleration requires a formal modification request, impact analysis, and client approval." Sarah shrugged uncomfortably. "That's what I told her. She said we need to be more agile and stop hiding behind bureaucratic processes." I spent that afternoon drafting a carefully worded email to Amber, explaining why we couldn't unilaterally change contract timelines. I attached the relevant contract clauses. I kept my tone helpful, not critical. Her response came 30 minutes later. Noted, "Moving forward anyway. The client will appreciate our initiative." Day 3 brought a worse problem. Amber sent an email directly to Colonel Hayes, our primary client contact. She used the distribution list from my files without asking. The email announced that Stratford was switching to a new subcontractor for hardware procurement. The new company offered 20% cost savings, Amber wrote enthusiastically. I saw the email because I was still copied on the client distribution list. I immediately checked the new subcontractor against our approved vendor list. They weren't on it. My hands were shaking as I pulled up the contract. Section C, Subcontracting Plan, was crystal clear. All subcontractors must be pre-approved. Changes require written modification. Using an unapproved vendor violated the contract and could trigger suspension of work. I printed the contract section, highlighted the relevant paragraphs, and went to Amber's office. She was on her phone, laughing about something. She waved me in without ending her call. When she finally hung up, I placed the printed pages on her desk. "Amber, we need to talk about the subcontractor change." She barely glanced at the papers. "The email to the client? Great initiative, right? 20% savings will look fantastic in quarterly reporting. The vendor isn't approved," I said as calmly as I could. "Using them violates our subcontracting plan. We need to walk this back immediately." Amber leaned back in her chair, studying me. "Katie, I know you're used to doing things a certain way, but that's exactly why my father brought me in, to think outside the box." "This isn't a box," I said, hearing my voice rise slightly. "It's federal law. If we use an unapproved vendor, the client can suspend our contract. They can demand a cure notice. We could lose the entire $34 million. "You're being dramatic," Amber said dismissively. "The client will love the cost savings. Trust me." I tried one more time. "Can we at least schedule a meeting with our compliance officer? Get his input?" Amber's expression hardened. "Katie, I need you to be a team player here. Can you do that?" The subtext was clear. Agree or face consequences. "I'll draft the modification request," I said finally. "It'll take about a week to process properly." "No need," Amber said brightly. "I've already moved forward. The subcontractor starts next month." I left her office feeling sick. Over the next week, I watched Amber make decision after decision that violated contract requirements. She promised deliverables by dates that were physically impossible. She told the client we'd achieved security certifications that wouldn't be complete for another 8 weeks. She scheduled capability demonstrations for systems that didn't exist yet, and she started excluding me from client meetings. I'd see calendar invites for calls with Colonel Hayes or Major Scott. My name would be conspicuously absent. Amber would emerge from these meetings and send me summary emails with vague action items. Then I discovered something worse. I was reviewing our monthly status report before it went to the client. It's a detailed document showing progress on every contract line item. Green means on track. Yellow means at risk. Red means behind schedule. The report showed everything as green. But I had the previous week's internal status report on my screen. That one, which I'd prepared for our internal leadership, showed 3 items as red and 5 as yellow. We were behind on critical deliverables due to technical challenges. Someone had changed the status indicators. I checked the file metadata, last modified by Amber Vance. She was sending false reports to the Pentagon. She was lying about contract performance to a federal client. I sat at my desk, staring at both reports on my dual monitors. The real one, the fake one. This wasn't just bad management. This was fraud. I made copies of both files, saved them to my personal cloud storage, and tried to figure out what to do. I couldn't just ignore this. If the client discovered we'd been lying about performance, they'd terminate the contract immediately. Possibly debar Stratford from future government work. But if I reported Amber, I'd be reporting the VP's daughter. I'd be making myself a target. I decided to follow the proper channels. I'd report internally to our compliance office. Let them handle it. That was the right thing to do, the professional thing. I scheduled a confidential meeting with Donald Reeves, our compliance officer, for the next morning. I had no idea I was about to walk into a trap. I arrived at Donald's office at 8 a.m. with a folder of printed evidence, emails showing Amber's unauthorized changes. screenshots of the altered status reports, contract clauses she'd violated, a timeline of events. Donald listened to my presentation with increasingly serious expressions. He took notes. He asked clarifying questions. He seemed genuinely concerned. "This is troubling, Katie," he said when I finished. "You did the right thing bringing this to me. I'll need to investigate thoroughly." "What happens next?" I asked. "I'll review the evidence, interview relevant parties, and prepare a report for senior leadership. Give me a few days." I left his office feeling lighter. I'd done my duty. The system would work. Amber would be corrected, maybe reassigned, and the contract would be safe. 2 days passed. Silence from Donald. Amber continued business as usual, making promises to the client that I knew we couldn't keep. On day 3, my phone rang. Gerald Vance's extension. "Katie, my office." "Now." His tone told me everything I needed to know. I walked to the executive suite with my heart pounding. Gerald's assistant waved me through without looking at me. Gerald sat behind his massive desk, face red, jaw tight. "Sit down," he said. "Not an invitation, an order." Saturday. "Do you want to explain to me why you went to compliance to attack my daughter?" So Donald had gone straight to Gerald. Of course he had. "I didn't attack anyone," I said carefully. "I reported compliance violations. That's my responsibility as a program manager." "Program coordinator," Gerald corrected sharply. "Let's be clear about your current role. And your responsibility is to support Amber's leadership, not undermine it. With respect, supporting leadership doesn't mean ignoring violations of federal regulations." Gerald leaned forward. "Let me tell you what I see, Katie. I see someone who's threatened by change. Someone who's been comfortable in her little kingdom for 5 years and doesn't like sharing power. Someone who went behind my daughter's back instead of being a team player." "I have documentation," I started. "I don't care about your documentation," Gerald interrupted. "Amber is bringing this company into the 21st century. She has vision. She has connections. She has an MBA from Wharton. What do you have? 5 years managing one contract?" The dismissal in his voice was breathtaking. "I have 5 years of perfect performance reviews," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. 5 years of client satisfaction scores above 95%. 5 years of 0 compliance violations. "Past performance doesn't guarantee future success," Gerald said. "Amber sees opportunities you're too entrenched to recognize. If you can't adapt to her leadership style, maybe you should consider whether this is the right environment for you." The threat was barely veiled. "Are you asking me to resign?" "I'm asking you to be a team player, starting now." I left his office with my career clearly in jeopardy. Donald, the compliance officer, had betrayed my confidence. Gerald had made it clear that protecting his daughter was more important than protecting the company or the contract. I was alone in this. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in corporate sabotage. My access to certain shared drives mysteriously disappeared. I'd submit requests to IT, they'd restore access, and within days it would be gone again. I was removed from email distribution lists I needed to do my job. When I asked to be added back, Amber's assistant would send terse replies about streamlining communications. Amber started copying Gerald on every email exchange between us. My professional, measured responses to her questions suddenly looked difficult when Gerald was watching. Other colleagues started avoiding me. People who used to chat by the coffee machine now found urgent reasons to leave when I approached. The message was clear. Katie was on the outs. Don't get too close. Then came the formal written warning. The email from HR arrived on a Friday afternoon. Subject line: performance improvement documentation. I opened it with dread. The warning accused me of failure to complete assigned tasks and insubordinate behavior. It listed specific examples: missing a deadline for a report I was never asked to produce, failing to attend a meeting I was never invited to, questioning leadership decisions in inappropriate forums. Every example was either false or twisted beyond recognition. I immediately requested a meeting with my HR representative, Jennifer. She agreed to see me Monday morning. Over the weekend, I prepared my defense. I had emails proving I was never assigned the tasks I supposedly failed to complete, calendar evidence showing I wasn't invited to the meetings I supposedly skipped, documentation that my questioning was actually proper compliance reporting. Monday morning, I sat across from Jennifer with my folder of evidence. She listened sympathetically. She reviewed my documentation. She nodded in understanding. "Katie, I believe you," she said finally. "But this came directly from the VP's office. My hands are tied. The best advice I can give you is to keep your head down, do excellent work, and try to repair your relationship with Amber." "Repair what relationship?" I asked, frustration bleeding through. "She's lying to federal clients. She's violating contract requirements. I reported it through proper channels, and now I'm being retaliated against." Jennifer looked uncomfortable. "All I can tell you is to be very careful, document everything, and maybe consider your options." That afternoon, everything got exponentially worse. I received an email from Colonel Hayes's office. My heart stopped when I saw the sender. Subject: concerns regarding recent communications and project management changes. I opened it with shaking hands. "Miss Sullivan, our office has noted several concerning inconsistencies in recent project status reports and communications from Stratford Defense Solutions. Additionally, we've observed that you, as our primary point of contact for 5 years, have been notably absent from recent coordination meetings. We are requesting clarification on the management structure changes and would appreciate a teleconference to discuss project status at your earliest convenience. We value the relationship we've built with you over the past 5 years and want to ensure continuity of effective contract management. Please coordinate a meeting through proper channels." The email was professional, carefully worded, but the subtext was clear. The client had noticed the problems. They trusted me, not Amber. They wanted answers. I stared at that email for 10 minutes, my mind racing through scenarios. If I responded honestly, I'd be telling the client that their contract was being mismanaged. That would likely trigger an immediate audit or investigation. It would also give Gerald the excuse he needed to fire me for undermining the company. If I responded with corporate-approved talking points, I'd be complicit in the fraud. I'd be lying to a federal client. If I didn't respond at all, I'd be failing in my duty to the contract and the client. I was trapped. Every option led to career destruction. I drafted 5 different responses to Colonel Hayes. I deleted them all. Finally, I responded with the only safe option. "Colonel Hayes, thank you for reaching out. I'm coordinating with our leadership team to schedule a comprehensive status review. We appreciate your partnership and will follow up within 24 hours regarding meeting availability." It bought me time. Not much, but enough to figure out my next move. That evening, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Stop making trouble, or you'll regret it. We have lawyers, we have resources. You have a resume gap and no references. Think carefully about your next move." I blocked the number immediately, but the message was clear. They were watching. They were willing to threaten me directly. I sat in my apartment that night, laptop open, staring at Colonel Hayes's email. I thought about 5 years of work, relationships built, trust earned, a contract that protected American service members. And I thought about Amber's lies, Gerald's protection of his daughter, and a company that valued connections over competence. I opened a blank document and started typing. To whom it may concern, I hereby resign from my position at Stratford Defense Solutions, effective immediately. I printed it out. I didn't submit it. Not yet. But I knew what I had to do. The client call was scheduled for the next morning. Amber was planning to present her fabricated status update to the Pentagon. I would be there, not as an employee trying to climb the ladder, but as someone who couldn't stay silent anymore. I just had to survive until 10 a.m. tomorrow. I barely slept. Around 2 a.m., I gave up and made coffee. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, organizing every piece of evidence I'd collected over the past 3 weeks. I'd been documenting everything, almost compulsively. Every email Amber sent that violated contract terms, every altered status report, every false promise made to the client. I had screenshots, saved files, email chains. At 3 a.m., I called my friend Marcus from law school. We weren't close anymore, but he specialized in employment law. His voicemail picked up. I left a rambling message about whistleblower protections and retaliation. He called back at 6:15 a.m. Katie, I got your message. What's going on? I explained everything. The takeover, the violations, the retaliation, the threats. You need a lawyer, Marcus said immediately. Not me. I do corporate transactions. You need someone who handles federal whistleblower cases. But first, you need to protect yourself. Are you documenting everything? Yes. I have copies of everything. Where? On my work computer and my personal cloud storage. Katie, listen carefully. Do not use your work computer for personal documentation anymore. They can access everything on that machine. Use only personal devices. Send yourself copies via personal email. The company will absolutely try to claim you stole proprietary information. The words sent ice through my veins. They already threatened me with legal action. Of course they did. It's a standard intimidation tactic. Look, I'll send you contact information for 3 lawyers who specialize in False Claims Act cases. But Katie, you need to understand something. If you blow the whistle on a federal contract, your career in defense contracting might be over. My career is already over, I said. At least this way I'll be able to look at myself in the mirror. After we hung up, I spent 2 hours transferring files from my work laptop to my personal email. Every incriminating document, every piece of evidence. I felt like I was in a spy movie, except this was my real life. At 8:30 a.m., my work phone rang. HR. Katie, we need you to come to the office immediately. There's an urgent matter to discuss. I have a client call at 10, I said. This can't wait. Please come to the main conference room on the executive floor. My stomach dropped. This was it. They were going to fire me before the quarterly call. I dressed in my best suit. If I was going down, I'd go down professionally. I put my resignation letter in my bag. I had a plan, crazy as it was, but I needed to stay employed for 2 more hours. I arrived at Stratford at 9:15. My badge worked, which surprised me. I took the elevator to the executive floor. The conference room held 5 people: Gerald Vance, Amber, Jennifer from HR, and 2 people I didn't recognize in expensive suits. Lawyers. Sit down, Katie, Gerald said. I sat, placing my hands flat on the table to stop them from shaking. One of the lawyers spoke. Miss Sullivan, We've discovered that you've been using company resources to send confidential and proprietary information to your personal email account. This constitutes theft of trade secrets and is grounds for immediate termination and potential criminal prosecution. My mouth went dry. I was documenting compliance violations for legal protection. You were stealing company information, the lawyer continued smoothly. We have IT records showing numerous file transfers to external email addresses. We take intellectual property theft very seriously. Amber spoke up, her voice dripping with false concern. Katie, I know you've been struggling with the organizational changes, but this is really serious. We want to help you, but you have to help yourself. The second lawyer opened a folder. We're prepared to offer you 2 options. Option 1, you sign a separation agreement. You'll receive 2-month severance pay. In exchange, you agree to a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement and a non-disparagement clause. You leave today, and we don't pursue legal action. Option 2? I asked, though I already knew. We terminate you for cause. Pursue legal action for theft of proprietary information, and you receive nothing. We have counsel prepared to file charges. With your signature authority revoked and your access to sensitive contract information, the case is quite strong. Jennifer looked uncomfortable but said nothing. You have 30 minutes to decide, the first lawyer said, sliding papers across the table. They left me alone in the conference room with the separation agreement. 30 pages of dense legal text. I skimmed it quickly, my legal training kicking in despite my panic. The NDA was comprehensive. I couldn't discuss anything about my employment, the contract, or any matters related to company operations with anyone, including federal investigators, including auditors. If I signed this, I couldn't talk to Colonel Hayes. I couldn't provide evidence in an investigation. I'd be silenced completely. But if I refused, they'd fire me and possibly have me arrested. Even if the charges didn't stick, I'd be unemployable. No defense contractor would touch someone accused of stealing trade secrets. I looked at the clock. 9:45 a.m. The quarterly status call started at 10. I pulled out my phone and checked the meeting invite. It was still active. The video conference link was live. A wild plan formed in my mind. Probably career suicide. Possibly actual suicide if they followed through on criminal charges. But it was the only way the truth would come out. I stood up and walked to the door. I opened it. The lawyers were waiting outside with Gerald and Amber. I need to consult with my own attorney before signing anything, I said. I have that right. The first lawyer frowned. Miss Sullivan, this is a generous offer with a limited window. I understand. But I'm not signing without legal counsel. You can't force me to sign immediately. Legally, I was right, and they knew it. Fine, Gerald snapped. You have until end of business today. But Katie, don't make this worse for yourself. Can I collect my personal items from my desk? I asked. Jennifer nodded. Security will escort you. A security guard I'd seen 100 times, usually friendly, now stood stiffly beside me as I walked to my desk. Other employees watched from their cubicles. The walk of shame. I grabbed my coffee mug, a framed photo, and my bag. As I picked up my bag, I glanced at my computer screen. The meeting invite was still there. Quarterly status call, starting in 8 minutes. I need to shut down my computer properly, I told the security guard. He nodded. I minimized windows, closed programs, and then, casually, I clicked on the video conference link. The web browser opened, waiting for host to start meeting. I minimized the browser window, so it wasn't visible. Left my computer on. All set, I told security. He escorted me out of the building. My badge was deactivated at the door. I was officially suspended pending my decision on the separation agreement. I sat in my car in the parking lot. I pulled out my personal laptop and my phone. I had the video conference app on both devices. I logged in with my company credentials. The waiting room showed 20 participants already. The meeting would start any minute. I opened my laptop camera and microphone settings. Both off. I'd be invisible until I chose otherwise. At 9:58, the meeting started. I watched the participants' video squares appear. Colonel Hayes, Major Scott, 3 other military personnel, Gerald, Amber, 4 other Stratford executives, external stakeholders. Amber's face filled the screen as she started her presentation, and I waited for exactly the right moment to press unmute. I sat in my car, laptop balanced on my steering wheel, phone positioned on my dashboard as a backup. Both devices showed the same video conference, 23 people in little squares on my screen. And one more square, dark and anonymous, with just my initials, K.S. Nobody knew I was there. Amber looked polished, professional. Her presentation slides were slick, full of corporate graphics and confident projections. "Good morning, everyone," she began, her voice warm and enthusiastic. "I'm Amber Vance, Senior Strategic Director. I'm excited to share some tremendous progress we've made on the Phantom Systems contract over the past month." Colonel Hayes sat at a conference table, her military uniform crisp. Her expression was neutral, professional. But I'd worked with her for 5 years. I could see the slight tension around her eyes. She was already suspicious. Amber clicked to her first slide. "I want to start by highlighting our accelerated timeline. We've identified inefficiencies in the original schedule and have committed to delivering Phase 2 capabilities 3 months ahead of contract requirements." My hand tightened on my coffee cup. That was the first lie. We weren't ahead of schedule. We were behind. Major Scott, the technical lead, unmuted. "Miss Vance, can you clarify? Our contract modification for Phase 2 acceleration hasn't been processed yet." Amber smiled smoothly. "We're being proactive, Major, offering enhanced value before formal documentation. That's the kind of innovative thinking we're bringing to this partnership." "That's not how contract modifications work," Major Scott said carefully. Amber breezed past his concern. "Next slide. We've also modernized our subcontracting approach. I'm pleased to announce we've identified a new hardware vendor offering 20% cost savings while maintaining full capability." Colonel Hayes leaned forward. I could see her exchange a glance with Major Scott. "Miss Vance," Colonel Hayes said, her voice cutting through Amber's enthusiasm. "What vendor are you referring to? That information should have been coordinated with our contracting office." "TechCore Solutions," Amber said confidently. "They're a dynamic startup with cutting-edge capabilities." I closed my eyes briefly. TechCore Solutions wasn't on the approved vendor list. They weren't even registered in the system for award management, which was a basic requirement for government subcontractors. "I'm not familiar with that vendor," Colonel Hayes said. Her tone had shifted, no longer neutral, alert. "They're new to the defense space," Amber explained. "But their commercial track record is excellent. Sometimes we need to think outside traditional vendor pools." The chat box started filling with messages. I could see military personnel typing to each other. Questions. Concerns. Amber moved to the next slide, talking faster now. "Our security certification progress has been exceptional. I'm happy to report we've completed Tier 3 cybersecurity validation ahead of schedule." That was a blatant lie. The Tier 3 certification wouldn't be complete for another 2 months. I had the actual timeline from our security team. Major Scott unmuted again. "Miss Vance, We haven't received the certification documentation. Can you provide the assessment report reference number? Amber hesitated for just a second. It's in final review. We'll have the full package to you within the week. That's not what completing certification means, Major Scott said flatly. The tension was building. I could see it in Colonel Hayes's posture, in the way other participants were sitting forward in their chairs. Amber pressed on, clearly trying to power through the questions. Moving to scope expansion, we've identified an opportunity to extend Phantom Systems capabilities to include Holloman Air Force Base at no additional cost to the government. My breath caught. That was the biggest violation yet. You can't unilaterally expand contract scope. It requires formal modification, additional funding, legal review. Colonel Hayes raised her hand. Miss Vance, stop for a moment, please. Amber froze mid-sentence. These changes you're describing, Colonel Hayes said, each word deliberate. Contract acceleration, new subcontractors, scope expansion. None of these are in our contract. Do you have authorization from the Defense Contract Management Agency for these modifications? We're being proactive, Amber repeated, offering enhanced value. That's not how federal contracting works, and you should know that. Colonel Hayes's voice was sharp now, professional but unmistakably concerned. The chat exploded with messages. I watched other military personnel typing rapid questions. Colonel Hayes continued. Where is Katie Sullivan? She's been our primary point of contact for 5 years. I'd like to hear from her on these matters. Gerald Vance unmuted quickly. Katie is no longer managing this contract. Amber has taken over as part of our organizational restructuring. As of when? Colonel Hayes asked. And why weren't we formally notified of a change in program management? It's been a gradual transition, Gerald said smoothly. Amber has been training under Katie's guidance. Another lie. There had been no training, no transition period. I'd still like to hear from Katie, Colonel Hayes said firmly. Is she available? She's not on this call, Amber said quickly. Too quickly. My hand moved to my laptop. My fingers hovered over the unmute button. This was the moment. If I stayed silent, Amber would finish her presentation of lies. The meeting would end, and the client would be left with false information until the audit uncovered everything. But if I spoke up now, on this recorded call with dozens of witnesses, there was no going back. They'd fire me, possibly sue me, definitely destroy my career. 5 years of work, relationships I'd built, a contract that mattered. I thought about the airmen and airwomen at those 3 bases, depending on the cybersecurity systems we were supposed to provide. I thought about federal money being mismanaged. I thought about Amber's lies and Gerald's protection of corruption. I clicked, unmute. I'm here, Colonel Hayes. Every head on the call turned toward their screens, looking for my video square. I turned on my camera. 23 faces stared at me through their webcams. Amber's face went white. Katie, you're not authorized to be on this call. Actually, I'm still technically employed by Stratford, I said calmly, and I'm still the original program manager for this contract. Gerald unmuted, his voice furious. Katie, disconnect immediately. This is inappropriate. Colonel Hayes asked for me specifically, I said, looking directly at my camera, speaking to her. And before I'm disconnected, there's something you need to know. I reached off camera and picked up my resignation letter. I'd printed it in large font, clearly readable on video. I held it up to my camera, centered perfectly. Letter of resignation was visible at the top. Every eye on the call locked onto that paper. The chat went silent. Nobody was typing anymore. They were watching. I looked straight into my camera, straight at Colonel Hayes's video square on my screen, and I spoke clearly and deliberately. She's lying about the certifications. Absolute silence. Then I continued, my voice steady despite my shaking hands. And the subcontractors, and the schedule, and the scope modifications. Everything Amber told you in the last 15 minutes violates federal acquisition regulations. The call erupted. Amber was talking over me. She's a disgruntled employee. She's angry about restructuring. Gerald was shouting, "Disconnect her! Someone disconnect her now!" Other Stratford executives were unmuting, trying to contain the damage. But Colonel Hayes's voice cut through everything. Everyone stopped talking. Military command presence, even through video conference. Instant silence. This call is being recorded, as stated at the beginning of the meeting. Everyone should be aware of that. She let that sink in. Every false statement Amber had made was now on an official government recording. "Miss Sullivan," Colonel Hayes said, her eyes locked on my video square, "you have made serious allegations in front of numerous witnesses. Are you prepared to substantiate them?" My career was over. I knew it. But at least the truth would be on record. "Yes, ma'am. I have documentation. Email chains showing unauthorized commitments. Original status reports before they were altered. Contract requirement violations. I've been excluded from client communications for 3 weeks, specifically because I raised these concerns internally and was retaliated against." "That's absolutely false," Amber tried to interrupt. "I have proof," I said. "I reported these violations to our compliance officer. I was given a written warning for insubordination. Yesterday, I was threatened with termination for documenting the evidence." Gerald's video square showed him red-faced, furious. "She's making this up because she's angry." Colonel Hayes raised her hand. "Mr. Vance, I'm going to stop you there. Miss Sullivan, please email your documentation to the contracting office within 2 hours." "Yes, ma'am." "Everyone at Stratford Defense Solutions, be advised. This contract is immediately under review. Do not destroy, alter, or delete any documents related to the Phantom Systems contract. That is not a request. That is a directive under FAR Clause 52,208. My office will be in touch regarding our scheduled audit, which is now a formal investigation." She paused, looking at each video square in turn. "This call is concluded." The Pentagon participants all left simultaneously. Their video squares went black. Now, it was just me and the Stratford executives. I could see their faces. Shock, rage, panic. Gerald spoke first, his voice shaking with fury. "Katie Sullivan, you just destroyed this company. We will sue you for everything you have. Breach of confidentiality, defamation, tortious interference. You violated your employment agreement. You'll never work in this industry again. I'll personally make sure of it." My hands weren't shaking anymore. I felt strangely calm. "I submitted my resignation to HR at 8 this morning," I said, effective immediately. "I no longer work for Stratford Defense Solutions." I closed my laptop. I sat in my car for 5 full minutes, hands on the steering wheel, breathing. What had I just done? My phone started ringing. Unknown number. Then another. Then another. I didn't answer. Probably company lawyers. Instead, I opened my laptop again. I had 2 hours to get documentation to Colonel Hayes. I spent 90 minutes organizing everything methodically. A clear timeline, email chains in chronological order, screenshots of altered reports with the originals for comparison, contract excerpts highlighting each violation. I wrote a formal cover letter explaining what I'd witnessed, what I'd reported internally, and the retaliation I'd faced. Professional, factual, devastating. At 11:45, I hit send. Subject: Documentation of compliance violations, Phantom Systems contract, 37 attachments, hundreds of pages of evidence. My phone buzzed. A LinkedIn message. I opened it carefully. It was from James Chen, a senior program manager at Lockheed Martin. He'd been on the call. "Katie, what you did took guts. If you need a reference, I'll vouch for you. The industry needs more people like you." Then another message. From Sarah at my own company. "I'm so sorry. You were right about everything. Some of us are preparing our own statements for the investigation." Over the next hour, I received 6 more messages from people in the defense contracting industry. Some had been on the call. Others had heard about it already. News travels fast in a small industry. By 2 p.m., defense industry news sites were running stories. The headlines were vague but pointed. "Major defense contractor under investigation following compliance allegations." "Pentagon launches formal review of $34 million contract." My name wasn't in the articles yet, but everyone in the industry knew. I'd blown the whistle on a federal contract call with dozens of witnesses. At 3:15, I received an email from Colonel Hayes's office. "Miss Sullivan, documentation received and under review. Formal investigation opened under FAR 9406. You may be called as a witness. Thank you for bringing these matters to our attention." Short, professional. But the subtext was clear. They were taking this seriously. I allowed myself to feel relieved for about 30 seconds. Then a courier van pulled up to my apartment building. The driver had a large envelope requiring signature. Certified mail. I signed for it with a sinking feeling. Inside, legal documents from Stratford Defense Solutions. 30 pages. A lawsuit. They were suing me personally for $2 million in damages. The complaint alleged breach of confidentiality agreement, defamation, tortious interference with business relationships, theft of trade secrets, and intentional interference with contractual relations. My hands shook as I read through the allegations. They'd twisted everything. My documentation of violations became theft of proprietary information. My warnings about compliance became defamatory statements designed to harm the company's reputation. My participation in the client call became intentional sabotage of business relationships. Court date set for 3 weeks. I couldn't afford a lawyer. I had maybe $5,000 in savings. A lawsuit for $2 million, even if I won, would bankrupt me in legal fees. I sat on my couch, holding the lawsuit, and for the first time since this started, I cried. I'd done the right thing. I'd protected the integrity of a federal contract. I'd exposed fraud, and now I was unemployed, being sued for millions and facing potential financial ruin. My phone rang. Another unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Miss Sullivan?" A woman's voice, crisp and professional. "Yes? This is Colonel Patricia Hayes. I'm calling you personally, off the record." I sat up straight. "Colonel Hayes, what you did today took courage. You protected the integrity of a federal contract at significant personal cost. I want you to know that our preliminary investigation has already uncovered substantial violations. Stratford Defense Solutions is in serious trouble. They're suing me," I said, my voice breaking slightly. "I know. I saw the filing. Miss Sullivan, I can't give you legal advice, but I can tell you that whistleblower protections exist for federal contractors. The False Claims Act The National Defense Authorization Act provisions. You should speak with an attorney who specializes in qui tam cases. She gave me a name. Marcus Thornton, a law firm in Washington that handled major whistleblower cases on contingency. One more thing, Colonel Hayes said. Officially, I can't say this, but personally, as someone who's been in government contracting for 23 years, thank you. People like you are why the system still works. She hung up. I sat there holding my phone, tears still on my cheeks, and pulled up the law firm's website. Marcus Thornton, partner, specializing in False Claims Act litigation. Major cases against defense contractors, healthcare companies, government fraud. I sent an email through their contact form, attached the lawsuit, briefly explained the situation. I got an automated response, saying they'd review within 24 hours. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what Colonel Hayes said. Whistleblower protections, the False Claims Act, qui tam litigation. I spent hours researching online. Qui tam provisions allow private citizens to sue on behalf of the government when they witness fraud. If successful, the whistleblower receives a percentage of the recovered funds. But these cases took years, and I needed to defend myself now. At 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. Email from Marcus Thornton's law firm. Miss Sullivan, we've reviewed your submission. Please call our office first thing tomorrow morning. This is exactly the type of case we handle. Preliminary assessment. You have strong whistleblower protections, and Stratford's lawsuit appears to be retaliatory. We work on contingency for qui tam cases and can discuss defending against their suit. We'd like to meet with you this week. I read that email 5 times. Maybe I wasn't alone in this after all. The next morning, I called Marcus Thornton's office at 8 a.m. sharp. His paralegal scheduled me for an in-person meeting that afternoon. The law firm occupied 3 floors of a building in downtown D.C. Professional, established, the kind of place that intimidated me just walking through the doors. Marcus Thornton was 50-something, gray hair, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He'd printed my email and spread my documentation across his conference table. "Katie, I'm going to be direct with you," he said after we'd talked for 20 minutes. "This is one of the most clear-cut whistleblower cases I've seen in years. You witnessed fraud against the federal government. You reported it internally. You were retaliated against. You exposed it to the client. And now they're suing you to silence you. Can they win?" I asked. "Their lawsuit?" He smiled. "No, it's a SLAP suit. Strategic lawsuit against public participation. It's designed to intimidate you and drain your resources. But you're protected under the False Claims Act. You reported fraud on a government contract. That's protected activity. Their lawsuit is retaliatory, which makes it vulnerable to immediate dismissal." Relief flooded through me. "So I'm safe? From their lawsuit?" "Yes. We'll file a motion to dismiss, and I'm confident we'll win. But Katie, there's more we should discuss. You're eligible to file a qui tam lawsuit. You can sue Stratford on behalf of the United States government for fraud. If the government joins your case and recovers money, you're entitled to 15 to 30% of the recovery." The number stunned me. "How much are we talking about? Based on what you've documented? False certifications, unapproved subcontractors, altered status reports, unauthorized scope changes? The government could seek treble damages under the False Claims Act, 3 times the contract value plus penalties. We're potentially looking at over $100 million in exposure for Stratford." I did the math. 15% of 100 million. That's not why I did this, I said quickly. I know, Marcus said, but it's your right. You risked everything to expose fraud. The law protects and rewards whistleblowers for a reason. It incentivizes people to do exactly what you did. Over the next hour, Marcus explained the process. We'd file a qui tam complaint under seal. The government would investigate, which they were already doing. If the Department of Justice joined our case, we'd proceed together. If not, we could proceed on our own. It takes years, Marcus warned. These cases are slow, but you have solid documentation, a federal investigation already underway, and a client who clearly trusts you. What about money now? I asked. I'm unemployed. I can't pay legal fees. We work on contingency. You pay nothing unless we recover. And Katie, regarding your employment situation, defense contractors are going to want to talk to you. He was right. Over the next week, my phone didn't stop ringing. 3 major defense contractors called within 5 days: Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, General Dynamics. They all said essentially the same thing. We need people with integrity. We need people who understand compliance. Are you interested in talking? I took interviews with all of them, not because I was playing hard to get, but because I was genuinely shocked anyone would hire me after what I'd done. But the industry saw it differently. I hadn't destroyed a contract. I'd protected one. I hadn't been disloyal. I'd been ethical. And in an industry built on government trust and security clearances, ethics mattered. 2 weeks after the quarterly call, I accepted a position with Raytheon as Senior Program Manager for a $45 million Navy contract, $15,000 more than my old salary, with explicit ethics oversight responsibilities. My first day, the VP who hired me said something I'll never forget. Katie, we hired you because you did the hard thing. You put integrity above career security. That's exactly who we want managing our government contracts. Meanwhile, Marcus filed our motion to dismiss Stratford's lawsuit. The judge granted it within a week. Not only dismissed, but with prejudice, meaning they couldn't refile. The judge's order included pointed language about apparent retaliatory litigation against a protected whistleblower. Stratford's legal team dropped their appeal immediately. Marcus filed my qui tam complaint under seal. The Department of Justice opened their formal investigation. 6 weeks after the call, the Pentagon announced they were terminating the Phantom Systems contract for cause. The worst outcome possible for a government contractor. It triggered automatic suspension and potential debarment. Stratford Defense Solutions would likely never win another federal contract. The defense industry media covered it extensively. My name was now public. Whistleblower Katie Sullivan exposed compliance violations during a live quarterly status call. Some articles praised me. Others questioned whether I'd followed proper channels. A few industry blogs accused me of grandstanding. I didn't read the comments. 3 months after everything exploded, the criminal investigation expanded. The Department of Justice was looking into Gerald and Amber personally. Gerald Vance resigned as VP. His resignation letter, leaked to the media, claimed he was stepping down to focus on family. Everyone knew better. Amber was fired. Stratford's board released a statement blaming individuals who violated company policy and legal requirements. They tried to distance the company from the scandal, but the damage was done. My qui tam case proceeded slowly, as Marcus had warned. Government investigations take time, but every few weeks, Marcus would call with updates. They've expanded the investigation to other Stratford contracts. They found similar pattern of falsified reports on 3 other programs. The government is building a massive case. 6 months after the quarterly call, I was invited to speak at the National Defense Industrial Association's Ethics Conference, 300 defense contractor employees in a hotel ballroom. I stood at the podium, looking out at the audience, and told my story. I talked about the moment I held up that resignation letter, about knowing it would cost me everything, about the fear and the anger, and the terrible choice between career and conscience. I knew speaking up would destroy my career at Stratford, I told them. What I didn't know was that telling the truth would give me something more valuable than any job. It gave me proof that integrity matters, that doing the right thing, even when it's terrifying, is always worth it. The audience gave me a standing ovation. Afterwards, 3 young program managers approached me. They were facing similar situations at their companies, witnessing compliance violations, unsure whether to report. "How do we find the courage to do what you did?" one asked. I thought about that question carefully. "You already have the courage," I said. "You just need to remember why you got into this work. We manage defense contracts. We provide capabilities that protect service members. That's not just a job. That's a responsibility. And when you remember that, the choice becomes clearer." 1 year after the quarterly call, Marcus called with news. "The Department of Justice is joining our case. They're settling with Stratford for $52 million. The company admits to fraud and agrees to enhanced compliance monitoring for 5 years. Gerald and Amber are personally barred from federal contracting for life. My share of the settlement, as the whistleblower, $7,800,000. I sat in silence for a long moment after Marcus told me. "Katie, are you there?" "I didn't do this for money," I said. "I know, but you're entitled to it. You risked everything to expose fraud. This is the law, recognizing your courage. That money changed my life in ways I'm still processing, but I didn't keep all of it. I established a legal defense fund for other defense contractor whistleblowers. I knew others would face what I faced. They'd need lawyers, support, resources. I wanted them to have what I barely found in time." 18 months after that quarterly call, I received an unexpected email from Colonel Patricia Hayes. "Katie, I wanted you to know that the Phantom Systems contract has been recompeted and awarded to a new contractor. The cybersecurity infrastructure your original work designed is now being implemented properly. The airmen and airwomen at those 3 bases are better protected because of your integrity. Thank you for your service to this country. You may not wear a uniform, but you're a patriot. Colonel Hayes." I printed that email and framed it. It hangs in my office. Today, I manage that Navy contract at Raytheon. I've been promoted twice. I'm known in the industry now, not just as a program manager, but as someone who stood up when it mattered. I mentor young contractors. I teach classes on ethics and compliance. I speak at conferences. And sometimes, late at night, I think about that moment in my car, laptop balanced on my steering wheel, resignation letter in my hand, the choice between silence and truth. I think about who I was before that moment. Someone who believed in doing good work, but wasn't sure she'd have the courage to fight for it. And I think about who I became. Someone scarred but stronger, damaged but unbroken. Someone who learned that integrity isn't the absence of fear. It's refusing to let fear stop you from doing what's right. Katie Sullivan destroyed a $34 million contract. But she saved something infinitely more valuable. She proved that in a world that often rewards corruption and punishes honesty, telling the truth is always worth it, even when it costs you everything. Because in the end, the only thing that can truly destroy you is living a life you're ashamed of. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever faced a moment where doing the right thing meant risking everything? What would you have done in my situation? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about courage, integrity, and fighting back against injustice. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that standing up for what's right is always worth it, no matter the cost. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that your integrity is worth more than any job, any contract, any amount of money. Stay strong, stay ethical, and never let fear silence your voice.